with the university's president. And as we hear stories of how investors reshape the Canadian housing market, a CBC Investigates story shows a similar situation happening to Farmland. And an iconic establishment reimagined. We go inside Michigan Central Station ahead of its grand reopening. And we take a look at what more than $700 million can do for the ultimate fixer-upper. Leaders of a pro-Palestinian encampment say that they've brought their demands directly to the University of Windsor's president. This is the first time the president has met with the group, and it comes ahead of spring convocation tomorrow. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa joins us now live from the encampment. Jen, how did these talks with the president go today?
Yeah, I'm told that the meeting went well today. That's according to one of the co-organizers of the encampment, Jenna Jandal Al-Rafay. Now, this encampment has been here at the heart of the University of Windsor since May 10th. The group actually had a meeting with the university on May 17th, but they were disappointed because the president hadn't been there. Today, they say that they met with him for the first time. Jandal Al-Rafay didn't want to share too much about the meeting, saying that these conversations are ongoing and likely will continue throughout the rest of the week, but she told me that she was hopeful and optimistic, saying that, there was clearly a collective understanding of what they want from the university, and she thinks that they will have productive negotiations. Now, just a reminder of what this group is asking for. There's 6 demands. They want the university to disclose and divest of any investments that would benefit Israel. They want them to declare a stance in the war, as well as defend and support Palestinian students, and also boycott academic institutions that have ties or connections to Israel. The university didn't tell me whether it was possible for an interview today.
Staff of the faculty at this university, they've also gotten involved in this as well. What are the recent developments there?
Yeah, so we know that there's been 68 faculty and instructors that have signed on to an open letter that was sent to President Robert Gordon on Thursday. And the letter basically says that they're concerned about the lack of response, the lack of action around this particular issue, especially after the Faculty Association agreed to remove pension funds from companies and investments that are connected to Israel. I'm told that the school has to actually approve this, but faculty say that that hasn't happened. Now, there's 9 demands listed in this letter from faculty. A lot of them are very similar to what this encampment here is asking for. I spoke with some of the professors who wrote the letter today. They're disappointed that the school really hasn't responded to their letter just yet.
The fact that we have had no response from the university administration at all, I think it's extremely problematic, to put it mildly. If not, it's insulting actually to faculty members.
Meetings and progress is not action. Right? It's not implementation. The fact that they've known about these for so long and in very, very clear detail, and we're concerned that they might be just bogging it down with meetings, with performances, right? That of meeting with the students, of procedure.
So as you can hear there, a little bit of skepticism as to whether the student demands will be met or whether they'll get a response really to their letter. And what we know is that we've seen such varied responses to these encampments across Ontario. So at the University of Toronto, for example, they've filed an injunction to remove that encampment completely. That's awaiting a hearing. And then we also know at McMaster University in Hamilton, their encampment actually ended a little bit over a week ago because they came to an agreement. So here at Windsor on campus, the spring convocation is happening tomorrow. It's going until June 7th. Right now, this encampment has no plans of leaving, but of course, Chris, we're going to stay tuned in to those conversations as they progress.
Thanks, it's Jen. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa live tonight. Police are searching for people that they believe were part of a recent home invasion. They say it happened Friday night at a home on Glengarry Avenue near University Avenue. Police say 5 people forced their way inside armed with a machete. A person inside was injured. Officers have arrested a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old. 3 more suspects are wanted, all believed to be between the ages of 18 and 21. Relatives of Scott Kersey say he was an outdoorsman who loved to walk. His family in mourning tonight after his body was recovered from the Detroit River. The 64-year-old was last seen in December. Police say they found his body in the river near Morton Drive last week. Police launched an extensive search at Malden Park and at Black Oak Heritage Park in January when he went missing. It's not known why Kersey ended up in the river, but police say there does not appear to be anything suspicious about the death.
He liked fish, and he was really an outdoorsman. and he liked fish, and he loved walking. He could probably walk the city. I would like to say my deepest condolences and prayers for the family. I'm glad they have closure, and just know that God's in control.
A plastics company in Sarnia shut down by the province is delaying its plan to empty benzene tanks. Ineos Styrolution says it's part of how it's prioritizing safety, not speed, in following provincial orders. The company is under strict orders to reduce benzene emissions by about 90%. Benzene is a chemical that, with long-term exposure, can lead to cancer. Ineos uses benzene to create a product used in manufacturing plastic parts. Nearby members of Amjong First Nation say they were made sick by emissions in April. The company must also follow stricter orders from the federal government. It's asked the federal government for an extension on those orders. The federal government has not directly answered questions about the request, but the Minister of Environment took issues with the company's recent emissions at a press conference earlier today.
The reason we issued an emergency order after the province of Ontario had issued 4 emergency orders in the last 4 years is to ensure that Ineos cleans up their act. And there's no reason in Canada that we should allow a company to poison. We're talking about benzene here. Like, it's a very dangerous chemical substance. To poison a community, that's unacceptable.
Canada's first farm real estate investment corporation owns more than $1.4 billion in assets across 7 provinces. That's more than 56,000 hectares. In Ontario, Bonfield owns 114 farms. 8 of those are right here in Essex County. Real estate appraisal firm Volco Consultants says farmland values have risen 60% over the last 3 years, a sign of a growing trend. Since it's hard for some small new farmers to buy land, they decide to lease instead because it's cheaper. This professor of sociology says it raises some concerns.
There's I think a little bit of a disconnect there. Those investor owners aren't in the community, as was traditionally the case. I do think that there is a risk that this type of alternative financing model is speeding up some of the consolidation that we see in agriculture. And as those farms get bigger and fewer, that emptying out of the countryside that has been a long-standing trend will continue as well. I don't think it's fair to necessarily blame investors for this phenomenon, but it I think over time, is going to continue to sort of encourage that consolidation of agriculture and the depopulation of rural communities.
A landmark historical building in Detroit, recognizable to many from the West Windsor riverfront, is coming back to life this week. Michigan Central Station first opened in 1913 as a hub for intercity travel. It closed in 1988, and it became a symbol of the city's decline. Now, more than 30 years later, it is reopening with a new mission to act as a hub for innovation and to find solutions for mobility. We got a sneak peek ahead of the grand opening later this week.
So if you look at this singular column alone, what you have here in this texture represents the 36 years of water damage that this column received. But then up above that, you have a transition of some existing stone that was able to be restored, and then all the way up to the new stone painstakingly selected to match everything. And so as a metaphor, you have sort of all the chapters that the station has gone through, from its original design and the peak of travel happening and all of those people coming to Detroit. You also have the multiple decades of vacancy, but was sort of cultural catalyst for our city. And then you have the sort of new period. It's when those multiple chapters come together in a singular moment that are really special, and you'll find them scattered throughout the station in really nice ways.
I will say that when we think about Michigan Central looking forward, the fact that we are right at an international border crossing, the fact that the Windsor, Ontario, Toronto market is right next to us, we talk about all the time as significant and meaningful, and our hope is that the work here reflects opportunities created by that. there's opportunities for collaboration in what does it mean to use a border crossing for innovation purposes. There's all kinds of companies and entrepreneurs working on both sides that should have opportunities to collaborate. I know some of that already goes on. We're optimistic over time that perhaps even passenger rail is a connection again.
We've never been out of the game. We've always been here. We've just been using our strengths to come up with cultural innovations, design innovation. I don't think it's a comeback. I think this is just an indication of how far we're going to take it in the next 100 years.
Well, what an incredible transition there. The deal to put Service Ontario kiosks in Staples stores is being investigated by the province's Financial Accountability Office. This comes after a request by a Liberal MPP who's questioning how the arrangement happened without a bidding process. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has more.
Putting Service Ontario kiosks inside 9 different Staples stores happened as a sole source deal, with the government closing other Service Ontario sites. It will now be investigated by Ontario's Financial Accountability Officer.
This is a situation where this was simply handed to Staples without any transparency.
Stephanie Bowman first wrote to the Financial Accountability Officer back in January. She also wanted him to look into plans for Walmart being allowed to have kiosks. The FAO responded that he'll only look at the initial pilot project for 9 Staples sites. Bowman hopes it will bring answers.
They're shutting down small businesses. This is not a government that's working for small business. They're working to make their rich friends richer, and we think that the government needs to be held accountable.
The FAO's report will compare the costs and benefits of the Staples locations to continuing contracts with independent private operators. It will look at how Staples will be compensated and whether this will affect jobs in the Ontario Public Service. Service Ontario already had locations inside stores, including Canadian Tire and Home Hardware. The minister responsible says he looks forward to what the FAO finds, confident the Staples deal makes sense.
In this case, of course, we have more for less. So we're saving $1 million over 3 years, and we're getting more convenience, more access, longer hours.
The longer hours mean opening evenings and weekends.
Why don't they just work with the existing Service Ontario operators to extend hours? Why do we need to pay Staples to renovate their stores to do it when we could just have it be part of the contract with existing Ontario-based operators?
This is clearly another bad deal. There's no apparent business case for it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the FAO turns up.
But that's still months away. The FAO says its report will be finished in early 2025 at the soonest. There is a government tender open now looking for businesses to apply to have a Service Ontario site. It's a process Staples never had to go through. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Speaking of deals, there must have been a big sale on ships at some point. That's a ship with another ship and another ship on top of another ship. What a beautiful sight. We spotted along the Detroit River there, making its way down over towards the east end. I can confirm that these are not my boats. I have nothing to do with them, but it's always pretty neat to see that popping across the city skyline. We'll leave this little video here of these ships on a ship, but we're going to come back with a look at weather after the break. A foggy start to the day here in Windsor, but certainly burnt off with some nice weather out there right now. Victor Paulo with a look at your forecast.
Chris, how about that day today? A beautiful day in Windsor. As you do take a bit of a look ahead at what else we'll be expecting across the region, well, we're expecting some fog patches. Those fog patches will be increasing as we get close to our overnight. But by the time we get to our Tuesday, it's going to be our first 30 ball of the year. What do I mean by 30 ball? Well, it's going to be a 30-degree day, and that's not with the humidex. This is just 30 degrees off of what we're expecting the high to be. Now, of course, with the humidex, it can be closer to around 33, 35 degrees. So tomorrow you want to exercise, making sure you're on top of your hydration, making sure you got sunscreen on, as well as a hat, and try not to spend too much time outdoors, as you want to make sure you take a little bit of break and spend some time in the shade. Now, after that 30-degree day, everyone might be all tired out from all that heat. Well, the good news is we have some more rain in store. How much rain? All the way from Wednesday into your weekend. Now, for average temperatures this time of year, we know 23.8 is our average high and 12.8 is our average low. So we have a day where it's a high of 26 degrees, the low 14. We're well above seasonal. Well, not well, but we are above seasonal temperatures. Now, taking a look at what's happening for the overnight, well, we're expecting temperatures to still be pretty warm, considering how it's been over the last couple of weeks previous with all of those northern winds, which made things a lot cooler. Now, for the look ahead for the rain and when it's going to happen to be passing by Windsor, we do know that as we get later on in towards Wednesdays when we're expecting that rain to fall. As you do see, here's what it looks like on your commute home on Tuesday. Increase of cloud cover as we get into that overnight. As you do see, your Wednesday morning will be a wet start to the day, and that's going to continue all the way through, as mentioned, in towards your weekend. And as you can see close to your commute home, there are chances of thunder showers. Now, how much rain will we be expecting between now and, let's say, end of day Wednesday? Well, we're expecting around potentially 10 millimeters to fall here in the Windsor region. And tomorrow we talked about that 30-degree day. But do take a look at our 3- and 5-day forecast. We can see that 30-degree Tuesday is going to be followed up by a 26 on Wednesday and a 23 on Thursday and eventually a 19 on Friday. So for everyone who is sick and tired of this heat, well, good news. We got some rain and cooler days ahead. Over to you, Chris.
He says it with a smile. A lot coming our way. Up next, we take a look at a bureaucratic nightmare scenario for a man trying to get his health card.
Heart today.
An Ottawa man says he's been given the runaround for 5 years trying to get his health card replaced. He's now having to pay for visits to the doctor, and he's blaming it on bureaucratic inflexibility. Stu Mills has this story.
George Santowski's parents came here from Germany in 1967 when he was just a toddler. Growing up in Ottawa, Santowski's mother kept a jar on the counter that demanded a payment each time he spoke English at home. Now, almost 60, the handyman has completely lost his ability to speak German.
Gone. Non-existent.
His mother tongue is gone, but not his German birth certificate, and that's part of the problem. Santowski hasn't been able to trade in this relic of an OHIP card.
Well, I've gone into absolutely every Service Ontario hoping to speak to somebody that will actually listen to me.
There's no question he's Canadian. He's owned this house in Orleans for a dozen years. Because he has the old-style OHIP card, his doctor now charges him $40 for each visit. Santowski's only photo ID is his Ontario driver's license. He's tried everything to get a second piece of photo ID.
You know, even trying to get into Service Canada to look into passport or Canadian citizenship, I couldn't get in the front door because they now have security out there. They ask you what your business is, and I told them, and they say it's all done online.
His MPPs, Marie-France Lalonde and Stephen Blais, tried to help. They suggested he get an Ontario resident photo card, but found out you can have that card or the Ontario driver's license, but not both. Santowski has visited multiple Service Ontario outlets, but no one will listen.
Nobody seems to want to deviate away from what that computer tells them.
After CBC inquired with the Ministry of Health, it advised Santowski to write to what's called the OHIP Eligibility Review Committee. So he did, only to be told the first step of review is proof of having been denied a new card at Service Ontario. Without the ID and paperwork required to speak to an actual agent, he doesn't see how he can be officially rejected and get the official rejection letter. It's a crazy catch-22 situation.
I said policy seems to overrule compassion or common sense.
For the man who makes his living as a general handyman, fixing his broken health card is proving to be his toughest project yet. Stu Mills, CBC News, Ottawa.
A story there. The federal government says more than 150,000 people over the age of 70 have received dental care under its new insurance plan. The Canadian Dental Care Plan began funding work in May, aimed at assisting low and middle income residents. Today, the Liberals set a date for phase 2 of the plan.
I'm happy to announce today that we now have a clear date for the next phase of the dental rollout, starting on June 27th of this year. Children under the age of 18, as well as individuals with disabilities, will now be able to access the Canadian Dental Care Plan.
The plan is expected to cost $13 billion over the next 5 years. Commemorations to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day are beginning in France. Events on June 6 will honor the more than 21,000 Canadian troops who took part in the landing at Normandy. The beaches that are so important to the memorials are now under threat from rising sea levels. CBC's Julia Wong reports.
I'm here at Utah Beach, one of the landing beaches during D-Day. You know, this area is picturesque, but this beach and some others around it are facing the threat of erosion. That's why this area has been cordoned off. That's why there's this fencing that you see here. Sand has been brought in every few years, and those plants have been planted there to try and reinforce these sand dunes. And that's all to try and protect the museum that sits at the top of that hill. Now, experts say that this area is somewhat stable, but it's a little bit of a different story farther along the coast when we look over there towards Point du Hoc. Now, erosion there is eating away at the cliffs, causing them to disappear. Part of the cliffs there even recently collapsed and there was a landslide. Now, this beach and others around it are extremely popular. Tourists from all over the world come here to stand on these beaches, to soak in that history. But with erosion comes the risk of losing that physical link to what happened here, to that history, and that certain historic sites may no longer be accessible because they may be unsafe. And these are conversations that have a lot of emotion around them.
Some people told us that the emotion regarding this place comes from this unique location, as it wouldn't be possible to recreate in the same way the same link between visitors and heritage.
Utah Beach museums and monuments around here will only become even busier as we get closer to the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Tens of thousands of people will be flocking here to remember the countless lives lost. And the question is, just how much longer will they be able to visit sites like this? Julia Wong, CBC News, Normandy, France.
CBC News has extensive coverage from France to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Join Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault from Normandy for a cross-network live special Thursday, June 6th, starting at 4 a.m. Eastern Time here on CBC News Network. The Pride flag has been raised on Parliament Hill to mark the start of Pride Month. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, several MPs and senators gathering in front of Centre Block for the event earlier today. Trudeau condemned what he called rising hate against LGBTQ+ people. He also accused some politicians of trying to deny gender-affirming care to trans youth for narrow political gain. An ancient wall in Italy that survived the volcanic eruption years and years and years ago seems to have fallen prey to a Dutch tourist. Police say the 27-year-old man left a graffiti tag on the wall with a black marker. Authorities say that he'll be charged with damage and defacement of artistic work. Not clear if the suspect is still in Italy or has returned to the Netherlands. The vandalism was discovered yesterday. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And if you put on the alerts, you get a little notification to let you know when there's something that might interest you on our site. That is it for us. Thanks so much for watching tonight. Have yourself a wonderful evening.